Okay, guys, good morning. Welcome back to class. Hope you all are doing well. It's obviously a different look today. I'm at Chapman because of the whole returning to campus situation. So, anyway, get used to this. This is how it's going to be. I mean, only exception, I guess, is if I don't see any students arriving, like maybe 5 minutes or so into the meeting. Then I could probably go without the mask because then in that case, I'm the only one in the room. For now, anyway, it's just me. Maybe there will be a couple of those students that mentioned wanting to show up at some point, but no big deal either way. Morning, Connor. How's it going? Good to see you. Number one thing that kind of is a little hard to, well, I don't know, it's just like an adjustment thing, but like speaking through the mask while I'm teaching, I think there's a lot of body language and facial cues, plus the quality of my voice is a little bit muffled. So I'm going to have to really make a point to try and overcome those little obstacles by speaking a little louder, doing more direction with the other aspects of my communication. But yeah, good to see you guys. Good morning, Julia. Still have obviously like 6 minutes till 9 a.m., so we got some time. Yeah, the campus, I mean, at least at this point in time, is very empty. There's nobody here. I had to have a safety officer guy unlock the building, even though they said that it would be open. So there's not a lot of people around. But after all, it is the first day, so there might be a little more activity as weeks roll on. Hey there, Grant. Hmm. So yeah, I'm just chilling until 9 a.m. Hey Chase, how's it going? Good morning. Hmm. It's weird. It's definitely weird. Just teaching in a big empty classroom. This is like totally different. Hey, yep, good to see everybody. Got 5 of us here so far. Good morning, Kylie. Hi, Stephen. Good morning. Couple more minutes. Good morning, Sloan. Hi, Nina. Good morning. Hi, Nicole. Hey, Nicole. Okay, just another minute or so. Hi, Xiaonyun. Eloise, good morning. Hi, Ryan, good morning to you too. All right, guys, so let's just get things underway. It's about 9 a.m. right now, and so I'm going to get class started. Welcome back. Hope you all had a really good spring break. Obviously, you know, with the resumption of class after spring break, Chapman is, you know, making a push to get some of our classes anyway back into the in-person format. So, you know, over the spring break, I sent around a survey just to check on the views of our students to see if any of us would have wanted to have some in-person meetings. And I got a small number of students that said that they would prefer to have the option. So because of that, you know, my obligation is to just hold the classes here, just in case if and when that number of students, you know, makes a decision to come in if they ever want to. Um, Now, I said before this weekend that if there are students that wanted to change their mind about their attendance plans, they could just notify me, and then I'm happy to, you know, allow people that said before that they didn't want to attend, or for those that said that they did want to attend, to no longer attend. As of today, day one, nobody's here, so I mean, there's no problem with that for me. But if anybody who has decided otherwise would like to change their decision, or you know, have a shot at coming or something to class, that's totally okay with me. But just let me know, because the only thing is that I couldn't have more than 25% of the capacity in the room. But you know, it's a big classroom now that I'm actually in it, and there's a lot of space. So I believe that if we did have even like say 10 students or so, it would be fine. I see a maximum occupancy sign on the wall here that says 90 people because it's kind of like a little bit of auditorium seating in this classroom. I'm not sure when they say 25% if it's 25% of that number. I'm going to have to check with my staff secretary at the department, but long story short, there's room for people that would want to attend if they do. I'm not necessarily encouraging it, but I'm just saying that now that I'm here, I can see it would easily accommodate, you know, a handful of students. So anyway, just a few things to say. But since there isn't anybody here except for me in the classroom, I'm just going to take off these masks. So I'm definitely fully ready to go. Yeah, it's 25% of the maximum capacity. So if it is 25% of a 90 person occupancy room, that's what, 22.5. So it's almost the full class size. And I don't think that there would ever be a situation where like all the students that said that they wanted to attend would all come at the same day, you know, given the sort of you know, fickle nature of people's attendance probably right now. So so yeah, just I'm saying there's probably open space for seats for those that would want to, if that anyone's interested in it. But of course, if you came to class, you know, you got to wear a mask the whole time, and then you got to actually be on the campus, and it takes a little effort. It's not a requirement clearly, but it's just an option. So anyway, just throwing that out there. I was fully prepared today. You know, I even have the like full-on face shield by Honeywell. I've been walking around campus with this thing. because I'm not getting the virus, okay? That's not going to happen to me anyway, not at this point, not with only 2 weeks left until I'm fully vaccinated. But okay, guys, so let's just resume. We got some topics to cover. I'm working through grading the midterms, and I'll be done with them this week. I got a little delayed over spring break because I did have to come back to campus, take a COVID test, and fill out some other paperwork. So not to worry, though. It'll all get done this week, and then as soon as I'm ready with it, I'll notify you guys, and you can just check with me for your score on that. And as usual here in the chat, if you need anything, please ask a question or leave behind a comment, even if it's just to say hello. It's always good to keep a record of your attendance, if nothing else. Okay, then, so let's continue. In this class so far, we've covered a couple of big topics in philosophy, starting with the philosophy of religion and a whole bunch of essays discussing the question of whether God exists or what arguments could be given to make the case that he exists. And then we moved on to ethics, which is the study of morality, moral concepts like right and wrong, moral, immoral, good and bad. And we learned about the theories of utilitarian ethics from John Stuart Mill and the Kantian ethical framework of Immanuel Kant. And then we applied some of those theories to the ethical debate about whether we have obligations to the global poor. And then we studied the trolley problem to cap off the first half of class. So in philosophy, as we've said, there are many different specialties that people can focus on. Like in science, you've got biology, chemistry, physics, or whatever. In philosophy, we've looked at 2 subject areas, and now we're moving on to a third one. So not philosophy of religion or ethics, but what's called epistemology. All right, guys, so let me write this word on the board really quick. Little glare, hopefully not too bad, but what it says there is epistemology. And what that word means, it's kind of like just a piece of jargon within philosophy, but what epistemology refers to is the study of knowledge. Okay, so the study of knowledge, that's the concept of epistemology. So whenever we're interested in the topic, what is knowledge? How do we get it? What does it take to have it? Then we are asking questions within epistemology. And just so you guys know, this is like one of those topics in philosophy that I'm a really big fan of because in graduate school, when I was working on my PhD and stuff, my specialization was epistemology. So, I mean, that was what my dissertation topic was about. My advisor, I think, is one of the probably best living epistemologists in the world, Sven Bernecker. He's got some major books out from Oxford and stuff. Anyway, so like I teach all these subjects with a lot of interest, but I have even more perhaps specialization and knowledge with epistemology because that was kind of my focus. Those that focus on it in philosophy are known as epistemologists. So I guess I kind of am one, so I published some work on this type of material. But anyway, it's an ancient question, actually, what is knowledge? And we're going to learn a little bit about what some ancient Greek philosophers thought about this question. You'll learn that the definition or concept of knowledge traces back over 2,000 years to the days of Plato and Socrates, some of the classic founding fathers of Western philosophy. And so we're actually going to read a little bit and talk about some of the work of Plato and his teacher Socrates to get us started on this unit about knowledge. But to set that whole discussion up of what was Plato and Socrates' account of knowledge, I wanted to first give you a little bit of background history on these 2 important figures, because this is intro to philosophy, right? And I'm thinking that probably many of you, even if you've never, thought too deeply about philosophy, these are a couple of names that probably are like household names or as close as it comes to household names for the field of philosophy. I think it doesn't take a major in philosophy to have at least heard of the names Socrates and Plato, just since they're such towering figures in the whole discipline. So I think I would be derelict in my duty as a philosophy professor teaching intro if you guys came away from this class not knowing at least a few basic facts about the history and life of Socrates and Plato. So I'm going to talk with you guys about that history to start the meeting today. So in a way, it'll be a slight different feel because it's going to just have to do with the events of the man's life. But let's get his dates up here too. Okay, so the dates of both people. First of all, Socrates, his lifespan from 469 until 399 before the Common Era, BCE. Okay, so those are the dates of his life. I don't know if the glare makes it a little difficult to see, but it says 469 to 399 BC. And Plato is a couple generations younger than Socrates. He was a student of Socrates, actually. And he lived from 428 until 347 BC. Okay, so when we're saying BC, I mean, that's before the Common Era. So you guys know that in the calendar that we use, the Common Era starts or is pretty much dated to the beginning of the events of Jesus Christ's life and the early Christian era. So this is like 2,400 years ago, the time period where these guys lived. That's why the date and the year listed of birth is a bigger number than the year listed of death, because as the person's getting older, they're progressing towards the 0 year in the Julian calendar. So this is before the whole Christian era, ancient Greece, cradle of Western civilization, some call it. And let's learn a little bit about the events of Socrates' life. Maybe some of you have heard a little bit about these facts, but either way, we're all going to learn it together now. So, okay, Socrates. It's ancient Greece, it's Athens, Greece, and we're talking about like 400 and so BC. Well, Socrates used to sit up in the town square of Athens, and he became a well-known figure in ancient Athens because he would just engage people in conversation and dialogue. So he became known as this brilliant and witty and wise conversationalist, a brilliant speaker and orator. And he would just engage people in dialogue and discussion from all different walks of life, whether they were, high up members of the Athenian government or military, all the way down to just everyday workers and common people. And he had this impressive ability to open people's minds, change their views, and to get them to relinquish the claim to knowledge that they thought they had before they met him. So a typical exchange with Socrates, someone comes into it full of confidence that they have a strong opinion on something. And then by the time he's done talking to them through this typical way that he converses, like a gentle process of questioning and answering, this gentle Q&A process led the individual who he's talking with to change their mind, or to at least no longer claim such confidence or total certainty about what they had thought before. So this powerful ability to, alter people's views, at least open their opinions up a little bit, or to even flip them 180 from their original perspective on something, that became well known to the community of Athens, and it secured for Socrates like a kind of famous reputation. In fact, there was a word even invented to designate the type of dialogue method that he would use. The Q&A method of Socrates was termed by this Greek phrase elenchus. So elenchus, that's just Socrates' distinctive method of critical question and answer. So then in Greek, they call it elenchus. Today, in the academy, we often just refer to it by the namesake of Socrates, the Socratic method. But yeah, like that was his thing, and he became so well known in Athens for it. For example, one case to just note out of many, like a general from the military would speak to him, and Socrates, gets a question in like, "Hey, guy, let me ask you something. Tell me, what do you think is justice?" So that would be like the sort of stage setting for most of his conversations. What is justice? What is love? What is, the good? And he'll ask somebody that and then get their views, and they'll have a fruitful discussion from there. But in this one case, this general guy said, "Oh, well, what's justice? You're asking me that? I think it's just," this guy's very cynical, right? So he says, "It's just power. Might makes right. So whoever has power, they get to decide what justice is. There's no deeper analysis to it." And by the time Socrates is done, talking to the person, asking these interesting questions, the guy leaves the conversation having his view completely turned around. Like, "Never mind, Socrates. Now I can see through your, wise counsel that it's not just might makes right, but rather justice is acting in accordance with virtue from a sense of honor," or whatever, right? So just as an example of how he would do his business. By the time that these events I'm describing now are happening, it's quite late in his life. So he's almost like 70 years old. And he became well known in Athens because of this long-standing habit throughout his life. So much so that there was a group of young men that would sometimes just go to the town square of Athens to listen to him. This town square, by the way, you got to think of it as like the equivalent of like a modern day downtown area, but just in ancient Greece. So that would be a place where a lot of people would go to engage in commerce, socialize, meet with other people, and see sometimes street entertainers and stuff. And then you've got Socrates, this guy who you can just talk to about whatever. So he had this presence in the town square, well known to the citizens and the community. That meant that he developed a following. This young group of men, one of them was Plato. Okay, so now we get his character to enter the picture. Plato's one of these younger guys that would just sit around and listen to Socrates, and they thought he was impressive and inspiring. This group of young followers that would listen to him thought he was cool because they thought he's one of the only people that's willing to really challenge tradition and the received wisdom that we hear from our parents or from our elders or from just authority figures in the community. So they thought it was really cool that he would be willing to, challenge the views, at least, of people and expand their horizons in terms of what they thought was possible or what their own ideas were. So he had this loyal contingent of young men that followed him and just wanted to hear him speak, kind of like his students. But not everybody liked Socrates, though. That's the other part of the story. So as much as he had this dedicated following of young people that thought he was really cool and great, there were members of the Athenian government that didn't like Socrates, and they had these discussions behind closed doors, like, Socrates, we're worried about him. We think that he's corrupting the youth. We think that he's a bad influence on them. Like maybe he's getting them to think so outside of the box with this philosophy stuff or whatever that he's doing that they're no longer going to believe in the Greek gods, or they're going to stop listening to their parents or to their teachers or to the Greek government authorities. So even though he was inspiring and cool to many, to these folks in the Athenian government, they saw him as a kind of threat or something. So they decided this: we need to shut down whatever he's doing in the town square because we're worried about the influence that he does have on the youth. So let's send someone down to him from Athens government and just give him an ultimatum that he has to stop doing whatever he's doing, call it philosophy, or else if he doesn't stop, then we'll come back and we'll arrest him and press charges against him for something. So they sent this messenger to say that to Socrates. Socrates, look, people in the government don't like this stuff you're doing here, and you have to stop, or if you don't, we're going to press a charge against you. But Socrates has heard the message, and he's defiant against that in his mind. And if it's totally reasonable, he hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't hurt anybody. He's just having conversations. And by the way, he sees it as a positive contribution to the life and the intellectual health of Athens. So far from it to be something that's harmful or destructive. And he says this is all nonsense anyway. He's not trying to corrupt the youth. He doesn't want them to stop believing in the Greek gods because Socrates believes in them himself. So he just sees this as a completely, like a witch hunt, a totally fake and false allegation that he shouldn't have to honor. So he keeps doing his thing. And because of that, they do then actually make good on their threat, and they charge him and arrest him. So he's now put on trial. And so here's something interesting to know as I go through this history of Socrates' life. How do we know all these events of Socrates' life? Did he write a bunch of things down? Actually, no. He never wrote a single word to the page. So the only reason that we know all these things about him is because of what other people wrote, recording the events and discussions of Socrates in their own writings, including Plato. So Plato is the number one author whose writings describe the lessons and teachings of Socrates. And if it wasn't for Plato, the student of Socrates, all this stuff would have been lost to history. So we, I guess, owe him and some of the other Greeks a big debt of gratitude. Now, when Plato has his writings, and Plato does have an extensive body of writings, including the reading that we're going to get to whenever I'm finished with this history lesson, but Plato has a whole bunch of writings. The Platonic body of work, oftentimes they call those pieces dialogues, okay, Platonic dialogues. And the reason they're called dialogues is because they have certain similarities to the format of a play, where you have characters that have scenes inside of a narrative, and they just give their dialogue in lines. So in many of these Platonic dialogue writings, Socrates is the main character who speaks and who gives his lessons. Now, there's always going to be a little bit of a historical and scholarly debate as to how much of the Socrates that is found in the pages of Plato's writings is the real, true historical Socrates, and how much of it is somewhat of an embellishment or whatever, where Plato is just using Socrates as a figurehead for the expression of his own views. In truth, it's hard to determine where the balance lies, but it's somewhere in the middle. And we know that Socrates was a real flesh and blood historical figure. He's not just an invention of fiction or something, because there are court records that survived, and there are also other writers of the same time period. Aristophanes, a playwright, he wrote a play called The Clouds, and Socrates is featured in there. So he was a well-known person, and he did in fact live. But anyway, in one of these Platonic dialogues, if you ever read more, if you ever want to study further studies in ancient Greek philosophy and culture, you might look at some of these writings in more depth. But just to let you know, one Platonic dialogue is called the Apology. Okay. I'm just writing the word here just for reference. The Apology. The Apology by Plato is the dialogue where Plato writes about the trial of Socrates. So that's what's next in this life story of Socrates. That's why I'm just citing it on the board. Anyway, the Apology is kind of an ironic title, though, because it makes it sound like someone's saying they're sorry and asking for forgiveness. But Socrates is definitely defiant and unapologetic about what he's done as a philosopher. So anyway, though, it's called the Apology. So what it says is this. They put him on trial. And in Athens back then, they did have a criminal justice system, and they did have a trial by jury system, somewhat like an ancient ancestor of our modern day jury trial system, except for some differences. As you guys probably know, here in the United States, the system is that we panel like 12, members of the community that are agreed to by both counsel teams, and then that forms the jury. Well, in Athens back then, it wasn't just like a small sampling of 12 people or so. It would be like widespread participation by all adult male citizens that were eligible to participate. So it would be like a big auditorium-style hall with hundreds and hundreds of adult male Athenians that would all weigh in. So when there was a trial, it would be much more community-wide participation in it. So anyway, here you have this trial. The government of Athens is arguing that Socrates is corrupting the youth and causing them not to believe in the Greek gods. And, Socrates defends himself as his own attorney against those charges. At the end of the arguments on both sides, there was an opportunity back then that was always given as a custom to the accused. The accused would get a chance to stand before the jury in court and propose a counter penalty to what the state had suggested. Okay, so let me make sure that makes sense to you. The state tries to press a charge with a certain penalty attached to it, but at the end of the whole, procedure, the accused person would normally go up there and say, "Now, here, gentlemen of the jury, I'm innocent. But if you do find me guilty for whatever reason, then I would humbly request that you lower the penalty to something less than what the state has proposed." So this would often be the point in time where the accused could sort of appeal to the mercy of the jury and say to them, if there is a guilty verdict, maybe you can spare me from the more heavy sentence and give me a lighter sentence. So like in another case, perhaps someone had been charged by the state and they're trying to get the punishment of 10 years of hard labor. And maybe the accused person would go up there and say, "Okay, everybody, look, I'm innocent, but if you really think I'm guilty, how about 10 is too much and you just reduce it to 5? Okay, so normally they would try to get up there and sort of finesse a statement of a lighter penalty that's more lenient, but still punitive enough that it didn't make it seem as though they were not willing to meet in the middle or something, So anyway, Socrates gets up there, and now it's his turn to propose the counter penalty. So he says to them, and this is all in the Apology, so you can always read that. But anyway, he gets up there and he says, "Okay, guys, look, this whole thing is just so ridiculous and unjust. I'm innocent. I'm not corrupting the youth. Definitely, I'm making Athens better by what I'm doing. And so it's all good. But look, if you guys really find me guilty, the state has said that I should be punished with death. So they want the death penalty, which, as you know, is just the most severe punishment you could ever give. And that's way too severe. So here I am, and I'm going to propose a counter penalty. So if you guys found me guilty, which I'm not, but if you did, let's just say this. Not death, because that's a bit too much. How about let's just lower it down to something more fitting, to what I've done. So if you're going to give me what I deserve based on the accusation, not death, but how about, let's say this, wait for it, free lunch for the rest of my life in the nice big public cafeteria. That's what I think you should give me, not death, but how about free lunch for life? Because I don't know if you're listening, but when you punish someone, that's because they did something bad, right? but I did not do anything bad. I've done something good. I've done something amazing and great for Athens. So if you really want to give me what I deserve, let's lower it from death to free lunch for life. Okay, now obviously you guys understand free lunch is no way a punishment. It's like a reward. And not only is he asking that, but this cafeteria thing that he's talking about is not just any normal cafeteria. It's like the Hall of Heroes, where like only like war heroes and famous citizens of Athens are allowed to go. So he's basically asking for a high honor as opposed to a punishment, which of course is him basically saying to the entire crowd that this is, I refuse to, go along with submitting myself to a punishment because I know I haven't done anything wrong. Anyway, so he says that, the jury goes back, they deliberate for a bit, and then they do return a verdict of guilt. So however they found that decision, they decided that he's guilty. So now Socrates has been sentenced to death. But there's a little more of a twist still left in the story, okay? So now he's been sentenced to death. The manner of death, execution, is that he's supposed to drink poison, hemlock poison they called it. So he has to ingest this poison that'll kill him. But they had a belief back then in Athens, kind of like a cultural superstition, that if you have a person that's sentenced to die, you're not supposed to execute him if there's a boat out to sea on like some type of cargo mission or whatever, because they thought that if you do execute the accused person and you do it while there's a boat out there, then this could be upsetting to the gods, and the gods might show their anger by causing the boat to sink. So there actually was a big cargo ship out to sea at the time that he was convicted, and therefore they decided they had to wait for it to return safely from its journey so that they could execute Socrates in a way that would not upset the gods. Okay, so according to their beliefs, they had to wait for the boat to return, and it was not due to come back for like a week. So they had to wait, and they held Socrates in this kind of dungeon-like chamber, awaiting the return of the boat so they could carry out the sentence. Now, in that 1 week interim time period while he's waiting for the return of the boat, what happens? But late one night, deep in the night, in come to his chamber these young guys that I was talking to you about before, the followers of Socrates, including Plato. Okay, so he's in that group. And by the way, you can actually read about this. This is also written about in another one of the famous Platonic dialogues, which is called Crito. So if you want to hear about the sort of nighttime break into the prison, that's in Crito, Crito. Anyway, though, back to the narrative. So they're talking to Socrates now in dead of night, and they're like in these hushed voices. Hey, Socrates, look, come with us, okay? Let's go. We don't have a lot of time. You can see that we broke down in here. We bribed some of these guards, and you know what the deal is. We're getting you out of here. We're breaking you out of prison. This is totally messed up and wrong. It's unjust. Everybody knows that it's not fair or right for you to be executed just because you've done something good and practiced philosophy. These charges are totally fabricated and baseless, and we're going to get you out of here. So we've got chariots. They're waiting just out there, horse-drawn chariots, and we'll take you far away from Athens so you can continue to do the work that you love, that is such a good, valuable thing for everyone else, and you won't be executed. It's totally not fair, and we're here to stop it. So come on, we don't have a lot of time. Let's go. Okay, so that's what they've said to Socrates, right? Now I'm going to ask a quick question. Just give me your intuition if you're one of those perceptive moviegoers or just whatever, a judge. You have good judgment. What do you think? Did he go with them or decide to stay? What do you think would be the next plot point here? Does Socrates take this opportunity and escape? What do you think? Let's just see in the chat if you have any view about that. Yeah, that's right, Stephen. He did decline. Okay. So now I have to explain why he declined. So he says to them, guys, look, I appreciate that you're here. And let me just start off by saying, I do agree with you. I mean, it's completely wrong and it is unfair. It's a miscarriage of justice to the highest degree for me to be executed after a lifelong devotion to the city of Athens just because I'm practicing philosophy in the town square. So it is wrong and it's not fair. But here's the thing, and he has a couple of reasons. Okay. So he says, number one, if I escape, and he's like almost 70 years old right now when this is happening, right? This is like last year of his life. So he says to them, I don't want to live as an exile, first of all. If I have to become a fugitive of justice, then my old 70-year-old person is going to have to constantly be looking over my shoulder, worried about being apprehended by the authorities and living like a fugitive. I don't want to live that way. And he also says, not only am I going to have to live as a fugitive, but I'll have to be living in exile. I have to live away from Athens. And he says, as much as Athens has done me wrong here, I love Athens. I'm a patriotic citizen of Athens. He was in the Athenian military. He had children there that he raised. And so he explains that to these younger guys. He says, Athens has given me everything. And so I don't want to, like, end my life as a disgraced fugitive living in exile. I want to be a part of Athens, and that's where I want to die. And he also says, I believe in the immortality of the soul. So I'm not afraid of death because I believe that, my soul will just escape to the heavenly forms and it'll be there eternally. And then he also says, furthermore, I don't agree with the justice of this penalty at all, but I don't agree either about the principle that when you disagree with a particular outcome of the justice system, that you should therefore rebel against it and break the law. He says, no, I don't want to set that kind of example that if you got treated badly under the law, that you should then break it because now you're just going to take justice into your own hands. So he says that would be chaotic and anarchistic. So on pure principle, for the reasons that I mentioned, I'm going to stay and I'm going to just take this penalty. And, they reason and they plead with him. They say, come on, Socrates, can we change your mind? But he's firm in his decision and he won't leave. So they're disappointed, but that's it. And he's not going to leave. So then after that, the next day or so, the boat comes back and Socrates is now executed. And so he drinks the hemlock poison. There's a famous painting, one of those old classic Renaissance type paintings called The Death of Socrates. And in the painting, he's reclining on his back on like a table, and he's encircled in a group by these young guys, including Plato there. And he's got this pose where he's pointing his index finger up. And, it's art, right? So everything's symbolic and there's some meaning to that. What's the pose supposed to represent? Maybe it is that there's higher knowledge that he wants people to continue to pursue now that he's gone, or maybe just that his soul will go up into the heavens with the heavenly forms. But whatever, that's the end of his life. And so after that, Plato kind of carries the torch forward of Greek thought and knowledge, and he ends up founding, as an older adult, the Plato's Academy, which becomes the first institution of higher learning in the West, kind of like the ancient Greek ancestor of our modern university system. So that's Plato's Academy, and he has a star student there, Aristotle, who maybe you've heard his name. That's another one of the classic Greek philosophers, and he kind of then carries the torch after he receives instruction from Plato, and later on in his adult life, he becomes a teacher to Alexander the Great, who conquers a whole bunch of land throughout Europe and the world, and that further preserves and disseminates these Greek doctrines. And, here it is, it's 2021, and we're still talking about the life and times of these ancient people. So Socrates is oftentimes regarded as kind of like a founding father, like a granddaddy figure behind the whole establishment of Western philosophy. Even though there are some pre-Socratic philosophers, to be fair, he's often kind of given that nod as one of the big, originals. And I would also think that his decision to stay behind and not escape when he had that opportunity might have cemented his legacy a little bit, because, had he left, he would have been recorded in history as just a escaped fugitive of justice. But because he stayed there on principle, it sort of almost makes him like a martyr-like figure. He literally pretty much died because of the power of his example and beliefs when it comes to doing philosophy. So anyway, there's a little history lesson for you. There's much more that could be studied on that, and people do study much more, but that gives you at least the very basic overview. Now, from there, what we're going to continue to do is just develop a little bit of vocabulary when it comes to epistemology. There's some basic core concepts that anyone would have to be somewhat familiar with to really dive into the lessons that we'll learn. So I want us to take our time on this, and if we need to, it might end up occupying an additional meeting. If that's necessary, that's okay, because next week I did set 2 class periods for the discussion of Einstein, and it's possible to probably do most of that in even 1 period or 1.5. So we'll just take the time as it comes. But the next thing I want to show you guys on the board or whatever here are some important key terms and vocabulary for starting our lessons in epistemology. So I'm going to just erase this stuff and then kind of start off on that. Okay. And as I was just teaching right there, I realized, as I'm looking out in this classroom a little more carefully, that they've actually set it up in such a way that only some of the chairs are even possible to be seated in, because there's like plastic ties tying up some of the chairs. So now I can actually count off how many there are even open, because they have like little Chapman stickers on them. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, so it does look like there's about space for 25 or so, which makes sense given their maximum occupancy sign up there of 90. So anyway, yeah, it's probably capable of holding even almost full attendance in our class. So as people make their decisions, if they change them, we'll have the options, basically. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so yeah, vocabulary. Key concepts and terms that we need to kind of learn to do this epistemology stuff. So the first one I want to speak about is this word proposition. Okay, so in the philosophic usage of the word, proposition is just the meaning of a sentence, okay? The meaning of a sentence, that's the word, what proposition means. Now, you might see that and think, well, that's a bit odd. How is the meaning of a sentence different from the sentence itself? But it is different, okay? So like here, I'll show you how to understand that. I'm gonna write two sentences here, right there on the board, okay? One of them says this: the snow is white. Basic sentence, the snow is white. Okay, now, below, I'm writing another sentence here, and this sentence, it says, der Schnee ist weiß. H, okay, ist weiß. The snow is white, der Schnee ist weiß. Now, I figure there's probably not too many or maybe even any students in the class that are well versed in German, but I mean, English is a Germanic language. There are specific similarities and cognates between the two in a lot of cases. So probably you can just infer at least to the point I'm making here. So quick question, two sentences there. Definitely there's two sentences. The snow is white, der Schnee ist weiß. They're not spelled the same, they don't sound the same, so they're different. But if I was to ask you how many propositions are there here on this section of the board, what do you think would be the correct answer? Two sentences, but how many propositions if you had to guess? Let's see. Let me see if you could put that together. Because it is two sentences, that's clear. But in terms of how many propositions there are, let's see what you think. Okay, good, Dimitri, one. There is one proposition. So also, Stephen, correct. Let me follow up, if I may. Why is it that there's only one proposition? You seem to understand that there is only one, but can you give a little more of a fulsome explanation as to why that was your intuitive response? It'll be easy to say, I think, but I just want to make it clear for us all. So how is it that this is just one proposition? I mean, there are two sentences. So why is it just one? Go ahead. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. Okay, so Claire, the two sentences have the same meaning. That is true. Yes, they do. Okay, so hopefully it's not too much a surprise, but this just says the snow is white in German. Der Schnee ist weiß. So it's an interesting thing about language that the specific outward form in which a proposition is presented in speech or in writing can vary and yet contain the same information. Even in one and the same language, we can have two sentences which express the same information. Like I can say I'm in room 208 at Argyrios Forum, right? I could say Dr. Vulich is in room 208, Argyrios. Or I can say room 208, Argyrios is where Dr. Vulich is. See, I just changed the subject from me to the room, and I modified the way it's said, but it's the same sentence. Like if I say I'm wearing a plaid shirt or a plaid shirt is on my body, it's the same information stated two ways. And thinking even more deeply and kind of tripping out on it, I mean, world languages obviously show us the point that there are many different sounds and symbols that can give rise to the same content and information. And we can imagine a counterfactual train of human history where far different and even alien sounds would have encoded the same messages that we convey to each other in our words and in our writing. So let me just make sure that's clear and see some of your comments. Connor, they do have the same meaning. That's right. Dimitri, sure. Stephen, they mean the same thing. They both state that the snow is white, just in different languages. Very good. What would it be in Spanish? How do you say snow? Well, blanco, isn't that white? Anyways, not to worry. I just used German as my example. So anyway, I studied some German and French and a little Spanish way back in high school, but it's kind of I've lost a lot. Okay, so proposition. Now, why have I started with proposition? Because it is propositions that are the subjects or the objects of our knowledge, right? So it is propositional content that you either know or do not know. Like take the proposition that the earth is round. This is a proposition that I would say we know. Or the proposition that Chapman is in orange. Yet again, it's a statement of fact that I think is known. But proposition, that's where we get started, because without the concept of a proposition, there's nothing to know. So propositional content is the thing that you can either know or not know. All right, so next up. Oh, pardon me. Yeah, I'm still doing a class until 9:50, yeah?
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Sorry, I just had a guy just poke his head in, another professor, but he's got to wait. Okay, so next up, let's ask about what the word truth means. Okay, now with truth, I'll give you an attempt to define it. Let's see if you can tell me what you think it means for a proposition to be true. And I'm going through the terms in a given order because each one kind of makes use of something from the previous. So for you to explain what truth is, you'd have to say what it means for a proposition to bear truth. So what do you think it means for a proposition to be a true one? Like if I say that I'm wearing a checkered shirt, that's true. But if I say I'm wearing a hat, that's false. So what is the difference between those two propositions? What do you think? Just take a moment to think about it, but try to give a reasonable answer. We always talk about what's true and what isn't. I mean, isn't it true that you were born in the 2000s? Or isn't it true that we're the third planet from the sun? So in any case, where we use the word, what do you think it means? Drew, you say honesty, but no, not necessarily, because something can be true even if there's no people. So honesty only has to do with someone telling the truth. But a proposition can be true even if no one has said it at all, right? Like there could be aliens in outer space right now, and that could be true, but that's not a matter of me being honest because I'm not in a position to tell a lie about it because I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so Grant, propositions that are accurate to reality. Very good, yes. I like the way you've put it. Stephen, you say when the evidence supports the truth outweighs counter evidence. Also, Brian, you talk about proof. Now, let me stop you guys right there, Stephen and Brian, because I have to make a correction to your thinking. Because it's not a bad thing that you've said that, though, because that, to be honest, is the most ordinary, common response that does come back whenever I ask this question in any class where I teach it. You ask people, what is truth? And usually the first instinct is something to do with proof, something that you can really prove. Now, let me explain why that's not quite right. Proof, evidence, is what you would have to have a reason to think something is true. But of course, something can be true even if nobody has proof or even if no one has found out about it yet. Okay, let me give you a quick hypothetical scenario, but it's something that can and has really happened too. Take the case of somebody that just goes missing, okay? So they're just missing one day. And from the friends and family point of view, they're all like, what happened to them? We don't know where they went. Maybe they got into an accident, fell into the ocean, and now they're at the bottom of the ocean and no one will find them. Or maybe they committed suicide and we just don't know where they were. Or maybe they even got abducted and murdered, God forbid. We just don't know the answer. Suppose that's the case. Now, couldn't it still be true, though, that the person did get murdered and the person that murdered them buried the body, and now that murderer has passed away? So there's not even one person living on the planet Earth that knows that this happened or knows the whereabouts of the body. But could it not still be true, despite all that happened? Yes, it could still be true, even if no one is aware of it. Doesn't that make sense, Stephen and Brian? So when you say something that the evidence supports, sometimes, yes, but sometimes there are facts that are out there that just no one has discovered, and they're still true, right? Like there could be aliens living somewhere in outer space in this big universe, and that could be true, but I don't have proof of it, or at least I don't have sufficient proof. If I had the proof, I would have a reason to think it's true. So proof, evidence, justification, that's what gives you reasons to think something's true. But just it being true has more to do with what Grant has said, okay? So let me pick up on that. What you've said, Grant, is that when the proposition is accurate to reality, and that's very clear, and that's pretty much the right definition according to the standard way that it's thought of in logic and philosophy. So here it is. They often call it the correspondence theory of truth. It has to do with matching. It's when the proposition matches the world's facts. So it's when what a proposition says matches the facts of reality. Okay, so propositions say things, but when they say true things, the world matches what they say. So like when I said to you that I'm wearing a checkered shirt, I'm saying that, yes, but it's not just me saying it, it's a fact, as you can see. And when I'm saying I'm wearing a hat, that's something I can say, but if I say it, I'm saying something false because it's not a fact that there's a hat there, as you can see. So with statements, we compare them to the world and the reality to see if they're true or false. If a person tells you that the planet is flat, I mean, that's false. They can say this, but in fact, in reality, it's not that shape. Okay, so the world has facts, and we have propositions which can either match those facts or not. When we have false statements or false beliefs, that is because there's propositional content that's not the same as what's happening in reality. So if I told you again, like I was born in 1960, that's just not the case. That is not at all the year or even decade when I was born. So I would be speaking something false. Sometimes when we say false things, we are ourselves misled or confused. And so we just unwittingly pass along false information to others. In some cases, though, people deliberately try to deceive, like say someone trying to cover up a crime or that they cheated on someone and trying to, not let the other person find out about it. So anyway, the goal, though, is to get to the facts and the truth. So next up, as we continue developing some vocabulary, we have the word belief. So what do you think it means to believe a proposition? So, and another hint, to define this word, it has something to do with the concept of truth. So what is it to believe a sentence or proposition? Like, for example, do you believe that Chapman is in Orange County? Or do you believe that aliens exist or that they don't exist? Well, a belief, what do you think it is to have a belief? We started this whole class with a discussion of the belief, whether people believe in God. Some say, yes, I believe that. Other people think, no, the statement that God exists, I don't believe. So what does it mean to believe a proposition? Like, I don't know, you could believe that, like you're on the jury, and you could be a juror who believes the accused defendant is guilty. And there could be another juror who says, no, based on the evidence I've heard, I don't believe that they are guilty. Okay, so accepting a proposition, good, Stephen, yes. But to accept it is to think what about it? What do you think it means to accept it, in other words? So if I believe that like a student says that they're sick and they couldn't turn in a paper, and I think that they're not telling me the truth. So I don't believe them. That means that I don't think they're telling the truth. So I don't think their statement is correct. So to believe something is to think that the proposition is what? Can you fill in the blank there? You say accepting, and that's very close, but I just wanted to make sure that we used our terminology that we've already introduced. So to accept a proposition, in other words, in more detailed words, is to think that the proposition is what? Stephen, you're not giving me anything on that? I thought I was working with you, accepting a proposition. Yeah, to think it's true. That's very good, Eric. And again, no, Stephen, no, not backed by evidence. I mean, backed by evidence, you might think that it's true even if there's no evidence. You might just say, look, I believe there's aliens just because I love science fiction, not because I have proof. Some people might require evidence for their beliefs. Other people might just believe things for no good reason. You remember the ship owner? Okay, the ship owner believes his ship is going to make it, but the evidence specifically contraindicates that. But yeah, so belief. When a person thinks that a proposition is true. Okay, so beliefs, they're up to you. What you believe is your choice or decision, kind of, based on what you think. So two people can have two different beliefs, and in many cases we do. Like, for example, take the theist versus the atheist. The one proposition, God exists, God is real. The theist says, I think that's true. Atheist says, I don't think that's really a true thing about the universe or about reality. So they have two different views, but they cannot both be right. Right? When two people have different beliefs, they can have their different opinions, but they cannot both be correct because there's only one set of objective facts. So like if I think that the planet is flat and you think it's round, we don't agree. I think the statement that it's round is true and you think that that's false, but there's still only one planet with one shape. It cannot both be flat, disk, and round because that's just geometrically impossible. So in the end, there's a set of facts. We want to discover what's true, and we form our beliefs according to what we think is true. But can our beliefs be wrong sometimes? Yes. Sometimes we can have false beliefs, like say someone believes that their partner cheated, but they didn't, or someone believes that the individual is guilty, but it was a false conviction, or whatever. So we're not infallible gods. We're not omniscient. So we can sometimes have failures of knowledge, but we just do our best. And the best way to get to the knowledge that we want is to have beliefs that have justification. Okay? And so that's one more vocabulary term to add here at the end of our meeting. Justification. Now that is just having good evidence or reasons to support your belief. Having good reasons or evidence, so I'll just put slash, to support your belief. So if you think your package got stolen because your delivery system said that it was delivered, but it's not there on your doorstep, maybe you'd say, okay, well, there are footprints leading up to where the package would have been, and I looked on my security camera and I saw someone walk up, and then all of a sudden I saw them place a hand over the camera, and then I saw after that that the package wasn't shown in the frame. So I'm putting all these pieces together, and that's my evidence that it was stolen. That's a reason to think that it was stolen in that example. Now, we have a little more work to do. We're almost done with this lesson, just getting the initial vocabulary out there. So we're going to really break down more of the Plato writing on Wednesday, and hopefully we can then transition into the work of Gettier. You're going to learn that he combines some of the elements here to give us our definition of knowledge. And I guess a spoiler alert, it's justified true belief. That's what a knowledge state is. Yeah, so we want to have true beliefs, guys, to a best of our ability. If you have a head full of false beliefs or thoughts, then by definition of true and false, you're out of touch with reality. You think the world is a certain way, but in fact, it's not if you have false beliefs. So the best we can do is to become good critical reasoners and logical thinkers, process evidence competently, and then we'll do our best to screen off the false beliefs that we might have had and have a better appreciation of fact and truth. So, like I said, there's more to be talked about on Wednesday, but this is just the beginning of our new lessons on epistemology. So I guess I got to go, guys, for the moment. I have to quickly walk to the next room, set up another live stream. But I appreciate all your guys' attendance as usual, and with the new format, hopefully it's not too bad. Let me know by email if anybody has any views on this or anything else, but this is not too bad so far, I guess. So are we all good? I'm going to sign off, just making sure that you're in good position to sign off. Okay, thanks, Ryan, Eric, everybody else. I'll be in touch, so let me know if you need anything through email, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.